everyone, it's Katie, aka Madame Macabre. Welcome back to all my returning subscribers, and welcome to anyone new here. Thanks for swinging by. As you could no doubt see from the title, I've got yet another story time to share with you all today, and this time it's a spooky one. Okay, so have you guys ever experienced having a dream that comes true? I mean, not like the Disney, a dream is a wish your heart makes. No, oh god, I'm gonna get copyright claim for that. No, I mean like you dream about something, someone, or someplace, and then after some time passes, a little or a lot, but time passes, and then suddenly that thing, person, or place appears or happens just like in your dream. In the case of this story, that happened to me. But unfortunately, it wasn't a good dream. Okay, so let's back it up a bit. This happened to me years ago. I was probably only 10-ish at the time. This was way back when my late grandmother was still alive and I still lived in the Pacific Northwest. When my grandparents were alive, they lived on a farm. It was beautiful and I really cherished my time there. They raised horses and chickens and a few other animals on the front half of the land, and the back, which was actually much bigger than the front, was all gorgeous, untouched forest and wetlands. This was my cousins and my favorite place to play. We had run amok through quite a bit of the forest close to the farm and had christened a clearing by the stream as our headquarters and built a fort there. All that being said, we never actually went all that far back into the woods. Our parents and grandma always forbade us from going in beyond a marker they had pounded into the ground, setting a boundary for us. Obviously, looking back as an adult, that made total sense. We were ranging from 9 to 12, and that forest went far beyond my grandmother's property. It stretched out and connected with a much larger forest, which was all completely untouched and expansive, I think because it had those wetlands in it, so it was state-protected land. No one could actually build anything or go in there legally. But, kids. It would have been incredibly easy for us to get lost, as it wasn't like a state park or anything, so there weren't really any rangers that regularly made their way through that could have found us. So obviously, perfect sense that they didn't want us going too far in there. Anyways, as I didn't live super close to my grandma, I didn't really get to see her all that much like I would have liked. So it was always this really big occasion that I super looked forward to whenever we planned a visit. And it was in preparation for one particular visit that the weird thing happened. I can still clearly remember coming home from school and being super thrilled because my mom had told me that at the end of the week we'd be going to visit Grandma. I couldn't wait as usual. I really must have been excited though because it translated directly into my dream that night. See, this is where things finally start getting eerie. So that night when I went to sleep, I dreamed that I was at my grandma's house. It was one of those weirdly, super, super realistic dreams where everything seems so perfectly real. When there's not even that weird dream logic anywhere going on. It's just exactly like real life, completely indiscernible. But yeah, so anyway, in my dream, I was at my grandma's house as usual, and then my cousins and I ran off to play in the woods like we always did at the back end of the property. We roughhoused around the fort for a little while, the one that was in the clearing by the little stream, when suddenly my eldest cousin stared off in the direction of the marker our parents had pounded into the ground. This was the 12-year-old cousin, by the way. She got this really cheeky look on her face and pointed at it, and I, at that point, just got this terrible feeling. I knew something bad was gonna happen. She started going on and on about how this part of the forest was boring now. We'd explored everything, there wasn't anything new left to do, and how we should now poke around a little bit further beyond the boundary. Of course, myself and my younger cousin expressed some discomfort at the thought, but we didn't want to look like babies in front of my cool older cousin, so without too much of a fight, we ended up giving her her way. And for a while, things were actually really cool. The forest was gorgeous, and the weather that day was really mild. Without realizing it, we had walked much deeper into the forest than we had intended. The trees were way denser, and there weren't any more signs of civilization. If we hadn't been walking along the same stream, I would have been a lot more panicked about getting lost. That being said, though, at that point, we were really tired, and after walking for at least a good 30 minutes, we were pretty over it. When we were about to tell my older cousin that we wanted to go back, She suddenly darted straight ahead, shouting something. It took a second to realize exactly what it was she was going on about until I saw it myself. There, in the middle of God knows where nowhere, in the deep, untouched wilderness, sat an old, rotting house. Despite being clearly old as hell, it was actually holding up pretty well. I mean, it wasn't collapsed in on itself or anything. It just had some wear and tear from years of neglect. It was pretty eerie, though, out there all on its own. Like, who put it there? I wondered if my grandma even knew it was there. I mean, technically at that point it wasn't her property, but that was property no one should have been on, so I don't know. Did the state even know it was there? I'm derailing. And this was a dream, by the way. But what really stood out to me was the cast iron gate and fence around it. It was made of these cool floral swirly things and shapes that I hadn't really seen much at that age before, and I thought they were really pretty, but they also creeped me out because there was like this hanging moss growing on them and it looked really spooky. By the time I caught up to my older cousin, she was already inspecting the gate, trying to find a way to make it open. She was going on and on and on about how cool it was and how that could be our new fort, which was much better than our old one. We'd have a whole house just to ourselves as kids. But something about the whole thing was not sitting right with me. The more I stared at that rotting old house, the worse I felt. I got this heavy sort of sense of dread sitting like an anchor in my stomach. I could feel my heart beating faster and this overwhelming sense of dread. You know the one. Something in my gut telling me that if I went into that house, something really, really bad was gonna happen. Like that survival instinct that screams down in the core of your being. I tried my best to convey this to my cousin, which I didn't have as eloquent of words as I do now because I was a child and I didn't exactly know how to describe it, so it probably came out sounding kind of nonsensical, but anyway, she was not having it. No matter what I would have said, she just wasn't going to have it. She kept calling me a baby and saying that I wasn't going to mess this up for her. All the while, this sinking feeling in my gut was just getting worse and worse. I remember feeling the hairs stand on end and just wanting to run. Eventually, my cousin managed to force the gate open and ran straight up to the house. As she did this, I legit thought I was gonna die. And that's when I looked up to a window on the second story of the house and saw this horrible, hulking shadow figure thing staring back down at me. I couldn't really make out any details other than it being a big old silhouette, but the sight alone was enough for my child brain and it set me off screaming. And when I say screaming, I mean screaming. I actually woke up screaming with my mom running in to check on me and telling me it was just a scary dream. Of course, she was right. I was there in my bed, not out at a creepy murder house in the woods. But it didn't really make me feel any better. I mean, how do you describe that stuff to a kid? Especially hyper-realistic. Like, normally at that age, my nightmares were things like ghosts or monsters under the bed. It wasn't anything like that. But I digress. So, enough days passed and nothing bad happened, so I eventually sort of let it go and accepted that it was a scary dream. So the rest of the time passed, and then it was the end of the week, and finally it was the day to go visit my grandma. As usual, getting there was a blast. I remember running around the farm with my cousins, playing with the animals as usual, all but forgetting the scary dream in the process. That is until my oldest cousin suggested that we go play in the woods. Now, the rest of my cousins cheered and started running off for the woods in our fort, and of course, not wanting to be the only one left behind, I reluctantly followed along. But the thing is, I just could not shake the memory of that dream, which was weird because I had been playing out in those woods tons of times before that dream, never had anything bad happen. I loved those woods, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it. It was fine for a while as we played around in our little fort, but after a while of that, honestly, my heart started pounding out of my chest because my cousin, of course she did, suggested that we go deeper into the woods, just like in my dream. I mean, mind you, she used different words. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was enough of a similar setup that I was like, no. So immediately I spoke up and I was like, nah, I ain't gonna go. I don't wanna go. It doesn't seem that interesting. And honestly, we're really not supposed to go past that marker. So how about we just stay here? And of course, my cousin chastised me, saying that I was going to ruin it for everyone else and that I needed to stop being a baby, that even my younger cousins were acting more brave than me. I said that was fine. I could be the baby. I didn't care. Go ahead, go without me. I'm just going to stay here. But she got this really skeptical look on her face and then said that I had to go with them because she thought I was going to go snitch on the rest of them if they left me behind. Which, fair enough, given how scared I was of the situation in the dream that I had, I might have. So, fair point on that, but at the same time, Anyway, so that left me kind of caught in my own personal little nightmare because, it was either be chastised for the rest of my existence by my cousins or just go with them. And, as a little child facing the peer pressure, I was like, okay, I will go with them, but the second things get hairy, I'm out. So I just tried to keep my little child mind calm, but I won't lie, I was freaking out a little bit. Things were just really similar to the nightmare. Mind you, again, it wasn't exactly the same. The forest that we walked through looked different. And in the dream, there were only 3 of us, my oldest cousin and my youngest cousin, where in this real-life situation, there were 5 of us there. So there were kind of enough differences that I was able to, rationalize it to myself a little bit, that this was not exactly the same as the dream, so it was fine. I don't know, after a while of walking, the rest of my little cousins were getting really tired and starting to join me in the "we're over it" camp and started complaining about wanting to go back. Because obviously in the dream we had gone a really long way. I don't know, we could have walked for about the same amount of time, but at the same time, I say this as an adult looking back, I don't know how my perception of time was as a child. But anyway, I was obviously piping in on it as well about wanting to go back home and not liking being out there. But my oldest cousin kept telling us to stop being babies and that she only wanted to go a little bit farther. So we kept on walking, following the stream deeper and deeper into the woods. And that's when we finally hit the crescendo of this little story. See, I kid you not, just like in my dream, my cousin goes tearing off ahead, and just like in my dream, I can see that damn creepy little rotting house sitting up ahead. That's the point where it's like, all right, we're dead. We're gonna die. But honestly, so I did not want to get anywhere near that place. But I also didn't want to get left behind because the rest of my cousins had already started rocketing towards it. So I had no choice but to very cautiously approach. But honestly, I refused to look up at that window. I just did not want to make eye contact with whatever was up there. And to my horror, outside the house, once again, just like my dream, there was the same exact old floral cast iron fence. I remember those swirly little pattern things. It was exactly the same fence, even with the hanging moss. It was stupid, okay? Just like in my nightmare, I get hit with this incredibly ominous feeling in my gut. And again, my hair started standing on end, and I once again started feeling that legitimate fear for my life. At this point, I really, subconsciously wanted to look up at the window, but I didn't. I honestly couldn't make myself do it. I just refused to look up. But that was enough for me, though, honestly. I didn't need to see more than that. I knew in my gut that if we got any closer to that stupid house, something terrible was going to happen. So, I did the only thing I could at the time. I turned and ran. I ran as fast as I could, which was actually pretty fast. I was a fast kid. I was in track and everything. And I shouted over my shoulder how I was going back to Grandma's house, and if they didn't leave too, I was going to tell on them all for going past the boundary. To my surprise, my other little cousins were actually right alongside me. It seemed like they were all also really spooked by this house and this whole situation and had been wanting to go back too, but they didn't want to be the ones to look like the big tattletale baby. And since I already took that hit for the team, they jumped on the opportunity and were right alongside me leaving. I could hear my eldest cousin shouting in rage behind me, but since she had been in the process of trying to scale the gate, she was too far behind us to easily catch up. She said she didn't care that we left without her, that the cool new fortress would be all hers and we weren't going to be allowed and we were just dumb babies. None of which really affected us. We didn't exactly want to go anywhere near that house ever again. But the really freaky part is only a few seconds later, we heard her scream bloody murder and beg for us to wait for her. At this point, I was nearing a meltdown, but we slowed down and looked behind us and saw my cousin tearing through the underbrush towards us. She waved at us just saying, "Run, run, run!" And honestly, we didn't need to be told twice. I don't know whether it was a ghost or like a mountain lion or something that was in that house, but clearly it was time to go. So we ran and ran and ran until we finally had to slow down to breathe. And after we caught our breaths, we tried asking her what had spooked her, what did you see? But she refused to say anything and just kept repeating that we needed to get back to Grandma's. We need to get back to Grandma's. As soon as we recovered a little bit, we went right back to running and practically ran all the way back. Finally, we all felt relief because we saw our grandma's house up on the horizon. We were nearly there. We stopped outside the yard before going in because my oldest cousin put her arm out and said, hold on. And thinking she was going to finally tell us what happened, we all actually listened to her. But instead of telling us anything about that, she just told us, okay, listen guys, we are not going to say anything to our parents because we're all going to get super grounded if we get caught going past that boundary. So let's pretend nothing happened, okay? She told us that we weren't going to be playing in the woods anymore, that we were done with that. And I tried again going, okay, what exactly happened? But she refused to talk to me about it and just said she's the oldest, she gets to say these things. We're not going to say anything and we're not going to go back. And as much as I didn't like the idea, nor any of my younger cousins, we were also really not eager to get in trouble because we had been told by Grandma and our parents that we would be in big trouble if we ever went past that boundary. So we decided to keep it to ourselves. And anyways, time passed and nothing else really came of it. As we got older, my cousins and I grew apart a bit, and we never did actually go back into those woods much. It's not that we actively avoided it or anything, it's just it never really came up again. We busied ourselves riding the horses and playing out front. And as I got older, my family moved even farther away from my grandma's, so I just naturally went there less and less and less, and it just sort of happened. Honestly, after enough time passed, I almost completely forgot about the dream and the incident altogether, until one year we had a family reunion. By this point, I was now already an adult. Anyway, I saw my eldest cousin at the reunion, and after talking about a lot of the dumb stuff we did as kids, I suddenly remembered that day. I brought it up to her and she sort of flinched, but this time she didn't deny telling me what happened since I wasn't this little kid she was trying to protect. So, according to my cousin, back when we were at that house and she was left behind at that gate while we were running away, she was scaling it. She was about halfway up the gate when she had looked up to the window on the second floor. She said at that point she saw a really creepy-looking, shaggy, wild-haired man with crazy eyes glaring out at her with this furious, crazy look in his eyes. And she didn't want to traumatize the rest of us when we were little, so she kept that to herself and just told us to run. So here we are modern day, and honestly, in retrospect, I highly doubt it was actually anything paranormal. It was probably just a homeless person or a junkie taking shelter out there in the woods. But regardless, it would not have been safe for us kids, I highly doubt. If he really was as angry and had this wild, crazy look in his eyes like she said, it probably would have ended horribly for us little kids if we had gone inside. I don't even want to think about it, honestly. I feel like that's worse than a ghost. You want to talk about bullets dodged, good lord. But yeah, this was the very first time I had ever had a dream that so vividly came to life like that. And I firmly to this day believe that it saved my cousins and my life. I guess all I can really take out of this is that you should always trust your gut. Your intuition is an incredibly powerful tool that has been guiding people for as long as we've been people. I don't care if it sounds like some mystical woo-woo garbage, okay? If your gut sinks and the hair on your neck raises and there's something deep in your core telling you that you need to get out of Dodge, avoid a situation, not trust a person, listen to it. I'm serious. It's saved lives, and it could save yours. Hooey. All right, well, that is my story for the day. Now, my question is for you. Have any of you ever experienced something like that? It doesn't necessarily have to be a scary one. It could be a cool one or a sad one or whatever else. But have you ever had one of those hyper-realistic dreams that after some time passes, even the next day, where something in it has come true? I am very interested in this kind of stuff. I find it very fascinating, so please feel free to share those in the comments below. Anyway, that is all I have for you today, so I will catch you all next time. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you have not already, Please consider subscribing and hitting the little bell for notifications when I upload again. I try to upload around twice a week. I usually do music and stories, and every now and then there's some other treats thrown in there. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to see you all again, and until next time, remember, everybody, stay creepy.